All right, good afternoon. Welcome to the session of Open Texas 2024. The Open Texas Conference is sponsored and convened by two cooperating organizations, the Texas Higher Education Coordinating Board, a state agency that serves as a resource partner and advocate for Texas higher education, and the Texas Digital Library, a library consortium providing services that enable free and open access to scholarly, cultural heritage, and education materials. I am Liz Tolman, a program director at the Texas Higher Education Coordinating Board, and I will serve as your moderator today. We welcome you to introduce yourselves and ask questions in the chat. Please feel free to turn on your webcam, but mute your mic unless you are speaking. And also, please be aware that we are recording the session today. And it will be available in the Attendee Hub for 30 days. Following the 30 days, the recording will be accessible through the Open Texas YouTube repository, and I will put that link in the chat in just a minute. I will also place the conference code of conduct in the chat for information. And our session today is titled Building Community, Building Momentum, Reflections from a Two-Year Institution in the Heart of Texas. And again, thank you all for joining us today, and I'll pass it over to the presenters.
Hello, everyone. I am Jessica Zbeida. I'm one of the presenters today, and we have an introduction slide in just a moment that we'll get to where we'll all introduce ourselves. But yes, as Liz just said, title of our presentation is Building Community, Building Momentum. So in this larger sustainability focus, those are the two main areas we want to discuss. So learning objectives for this session. So our hope is by the end of this session, the participants will be able to identify strategies to strengthen community and foster collaboration for OER adoption, use, and creation that are tailored to their institutions. We also want to give you a few tips and strategies for how to overcome resistance to change and really build momentum for growth at your institutions. And I'm going to pass it off to Yolanda.
So again, good afternoon and a warm welcome on behalf of the Open Education Resources Working Group at McLennan Community College. You can see all of us, all but one here on your screen. Again, you've already heard from Jessica, professor of English at MCC. Not only is she our master of slides this afternoon, but she is also the mastermind behind today's presentation. So 3 cheers to Jessica for getting this off the ground, up and running. I myself am an associate professor of English at McLennan Community College and the coordinator for the Integrated Reading and Writing Program. Also, we have Shannon Thomas, professor of biology, Mary Sides, associate professor of biology. We also have Kristen Cook, coordinator of library research and instruction, who's an invaluable resource to any OER working group. It's been a great help to have librarian as a resource as part of our working group. And last but certainly not least, Ghazzagh, who is our not new to MCC, but new coordinator of instructional design and innovation. Again, another great technical resource for our OER working group.
Thanks, Yolanda. There's Shannon. Yay. Okay, so this first slide, we mentioned earlier in this session that the focus is on sustainability. And that really is important for any OER initiative. So we're going to talk a little bit at the beginning of this presentation about what sustainability means for an OER initiative and how to kind of foster that collaboration. So when we're thinking about what makes an OER initiative sustainable, it's something that should encourage participation and collaboration and foster a kind of long-term success. So not just something that you can do in the short term, but that really kind of builds momentum, encourages engagement as it goes. There are 3 main areas related to this scaffolding of sustainability that we want to talk about. The first is infrastructure. Then we have resource allocation and organizational culture. And we're going to talk about each of these in a moment. So I'm going to hand it off to Shannon, who's going to get us started with our discussion of infrastructure.
Hey, hello. So infrastructure involves establishing structures to support and expand OER adoption. And it helps to demonstrate each organization's commitment to OER. And it includes guidelines, which are the policies for OER creation and use. And so that would include terms of agreement, proposal processes, and approval processes. So processes are steps for developing and sharing OER. Professional development, so training faculty on OER adoption and implementation. And platforms such as LMSs, tools, and systems that help us to access, create, and distribute OER. And then finally, people, which define the roles and structures in the organization to support OER initiatives. And so talking about the resources that help to implement OER, so support OER initiatives through financial and human resources. So financial planning involves estimating program and course cost, and also identifying sources of funding. So determining where the costs will be applied. Efficiency goals include creating course templates for adoption that can be used as an individual template for any instructors entering, adjunct instructors entering a course, forming course development teams, and offering incentives to convert high-cost courses. Okay, and then sustainability goals include culture, which involves aligning OER with college strategic plans and values. So communication, tailoring messages for diverse groups, such as students, faculty, staff, and leadership. Metrics, using and sharing data on OER growth and impact in order to demonstrate the effectiveness of OER. And then vision, emphasizing affordability, access, student access, and academic transformation. And I will hand it back over to Jessica.
Thank you, Shannon. So those are a lot of different pieces, right? And I think when we were getting started, Shannon in particular had experience before with grant applications where the reviewers emphasized sustainability. How do you know these efforts will be sustainable? So there's definitely things that I think anyone starting an OER initiative should consider. So for us, we were thinking about all of these different pieces for our specific institution. So what do we already have at McLennan Community College, or MCC? Are there policies, programs, processes, or even people that we need to bring in to help and support us in these efforts? What other resources do we have, both human and financial? So we talked about Kristen Cook, a librarian, being in our group, Ghazzagh, instructional design. So trying to leverage what we already have at our institution and then figuring out what else we need to ask for or what we can advocate for in terms of financial support, really try and earmark funding to go towards these efforts. And then we thought some about our institution's culture and values. Everyone's a little bit different, I think, right? So we wanted to think about what is it about MCC that makes these efforts uniquely suited to our students, our faculty, our leadership, our staff. So those are things we really thought about a great deal. In particular, some of our institutional values that we felt are most aligned. People is one of our values. So valuing one another and then also valuing our students. Integrity, really meaning and doing what we say we're going to do. So if we say we're committed to student success, how are we doing that? How are we really bringing that to the fore? And then excellence. Certainly at the beginning, we encountered resistance as far as our OER resources really going to meet the quality standards that we have for our students. So we wanted to make sure that that was going to be part of this discussion as well. From all of this, though, we wanted to focus on two particular areas, which is building community and building momentum. Those are things just as goals from the very beginning that we really thought were important. How do we build community among faculty? And also, how do we build momentum so this isn't just something we do once and then kind of let fall by the wayside when we get really busy? Because everyone gets really busy, That's sort of how it goes. So next, oh, sorry, I skipped a slide there. Kristen Cook, who is our librarian, was going to do this slide on challenges and successes as well as our group history, but unfortunately she couldn't be here today, but she did record 2 videos for us. So I'm going to try and launch those videos now, and hopefully they will work.
I'm not hearing the audio either. Jessica, sorry, jumping in here.
Can we not hear the audio?
Okay.
All right. Well, that's okay. Let me see. It may be because I'm sharing it, but I can also give sort of an overview of her slides too, if we're not going to get that part to work. That's okay. And they are embedded in the presentation, so you can certainly hear Kristen talk about it some. As far as our group's history, we formed originally in 2019, 2020 as part of a student success steering committee, focused on different ways to kind of increase access, help students really be successful. That was a bit interrupted during COVID, I think. It was sort of this scramble to get everything ready to go completely online. So that committee kind of fell by the wayside. But this was around the same time that the co-board and ISKME started offering lots of OER training sessions. So I started taking some of those. My colleagues started taking some of those. Our group as a little unit really formed from the resource for the resource retreat, which I think we took in 2021. And I remember as we were doing that, Kristen especially would emphasize, well, if we're going to do this, it's got to be for something. It can't just be this one class. We've really got to have some vision. We've got to have a sense of what's going to come next. And it should be something that really matters for our institution. So I want to give Kristen some props for all of that. I think a lot of what we've achieved is because she had that big vision at the beginning and really wanted to see where things were going to go. So she's very important for that. And she's the librarian, so she loves the history part. Wins and losses. So we also have on this side some of the challenges we face and then some of our successes, which I kind of want to talk about a little. So challenges for us, especially just collecting data on how many faculty are using OER, who is using it, how much money they're saving for students. We don't have a very good instrument yet in place to collect all of that data. And recently when we were thinking of applying for awards and other things like that, in recognition of the work we've done, that's been a big sticking point. So that's an area where we've definitely faced some challenges and hope to kind of have some more success in the future. Our institution also had a lot of discussions, particularly last couple of years, on whether we would move to an equitable access model. Right now we use inclusive access, which is slightly different, but we had talked about, should we just go to equitable access? And I think in that model, we weren't really sure quite where OER would fit, if it would have the same kind of recognition or advantages that it does in other areas. We've also faced a lot of challenges just getting folks involved. Everyone is busy all across our organization. So having folks have the time to attend professional development sessions or contribute work or form a team in their department to work on things, that's been a challenge, I think, just finding the time for that, particularly at a 2-year school. We have also faced some resistance as far as perceptions or prejudices about OER. Many faculty, I think, had this perception that if it's free, it's not going to be very good. If it's free, they won't have any PowerPoints that I can use or test banks for my students for questions. So we did face a fair amount of challenges there, I think, just getting people to really look at how OER has evolved over the past 5 years. Now to successes. Yay. We have had a lot of success, I think, despite the challenges we've also faced. So we've presented at Faculty Summer Institute, which is sort of our kind of on-campus boot camp for professional development focused for faculty. We've also presented at Professional Development Day, which is kind of a joint event for faculty and staff focused on innovation, best practices, those types of things. Recently, we have led 2 cohorts of our first training class in OER, the OER Essentials Professional Development course. So we're very proud of that. We've published 2 podcasts. So we have a podcast focused on efforts from our faculty to integrate OER, and then a podcast with an outside expert on OER. And I would say perhaps most importantly, in terms of financial support, our new VP of instruction is really excited about all of the work that we're doing. So having that type of support from the institution, a willingness to talk about having mini grants or course releases, all of that is very exciting for us. Okay, now I'm going to hand it off to John and Mary.
Okay, I'm not sure if Mary was going to go or if I was going to go. We didn't really work that out beforehand. Mary, do you want to start with the groups that we created in OER Texas?
One of these groups was already created. I think Jessica was the author of our original MCC group in OER Texas. And so those 2, whenever we started back after COVID and started working on this again, that group kind of got going a little bit more. I think it languished a little bit during those COVID years, but we've now got more in that. And she's also created one for our OER Essentials class. And we've had there have been small groups, but they've been really good and enthusiastic groups. We're really excited about those 2 cohorts and working on offering the more advanced class in the spring. So we've got those 2 groups. We've also been involved with our Professional Development Day. We have led a couple of sessions in on our Professional Development Day, trying to raise awareness for OER and encouraging people to think about OER, as Jessica mentioned. And some of those sessions, found out some of the challenges that we were facing with OER, particularly with some of those perceptions, because kind of early on, I think in the OER movement, some of the materials might not have been of the greatest quality, but now with so many more materials and things are so much better that we're starting to get a little bit more traction on that. So I'll turn it over to John and let him talk about the next 2 bullets, the podcast, since he is our podcast guru.
So one thing that, like Mary was saying, is how do we communicate and how do we get the word out about OER on campus? Because you can tell people to come to professional development, but if they don't really understand OER, which some of our faculty don't, and or if they don't have that, if they have some bias against it, then as an instructional design department, we had already started a podcast to get kind of a word out, get to talk to faculty about things. And we thought OER would be a great fit for this. And so we interviewed, Mary was actually one of the first interviewees for OER because of her work with OER already. And Nick Webb, another faculty member here, who had created a book, an OER book for English. And so we did a podcast with them, and just to get their experience and share that with instructors, and also to kind of clear up some of those biases that is OER can be quality, and there is good material out there, right? And so I think that went over real well. And then our second podcast, we had Jessica, I don't know if I can pronounce her last name, Schimizzi.
Schimizzi.
Schimizzi. Okay, yes, I know I probably butchered it on the podcast, but who is a great resource and we'll probably have on again in a future podcast. And I posted the links in the chat, so I know a lot of people like podcasts. So feel free to give those a listen and check them out. And then we joined some professional networking groups, mentoring groups through TXDLA, and I believe we did a presentation at TXDLA last year, a virtual one just like this one last year, and I don't know, we'll probably do that again this year, so which is great. And CGACLS, and that one I'm not, Jessica, do you want to tell a little bit? I'm not as familiar with that one.
That's the Junior College Librarian Association that Kristen is part of. But it's if there are any librarians in the group, there is a librarian consortium focused on OER that provides some mentoring, some leadership opportunities as well.
We also presented at two Faculty Summer Institute PD training. So we have a week-long kind of like Jessica was saying, boot camp for our faculty, which is usually geared around a certain topic. And I think one year we did technology and innovation, and OER was presented, and at that, and high impact practices, I believe, was another one. And so OER was presented at that. So we're getting in front of faculty any way we could, I think was the important thing. And that was a big one. We have a lot of faculty attend. And so that was really great to get in front of them and actually show them, get them hands-on with some of the, like the OER Texas group and some of the other places you can find OER out there. Was a really good experience for them to help kind of push that bias out and get them experience with some of the OER stuff that's out there.
And our Faculty Summer Institute is really good. It's a very dedicated group, tends to be a lot of the same people every year, but they are always the ones that are kind of interested in learning the new techniques and the innovations. And so getting in front of them with OER was really helpful as well. And I think found some open minds whenever we presented our materials there. So this one was really helpful.
I agree with. All right. So Yolanda and I are going to take the building momentum slide. So I'm going to let Yolanda talk about the pioneers and the accessibility rubric.
Yes, so as Jessica mentioned, it was important as we were working through this project to not only recognize people, but to make it an ongoing process where we could continue to recognize the work that people on campus were doing in terms of either OER creation or adoption. So we are very proud to say that we held our very first OER Pioneers Recognition event in April of 2023. So prior to that time, we had surveyed faculty. Again, Jessica mentioned we don't have great ways yet to measure OER as it's used across our campus. So we put together ourselves a survey and distributed that through our channels here. And through that information, we were able to identify 4 faculty members that we wanted to recognize, including our very own Shannon Thomas and Mary Sides for their great work in their classes, really helping students in the sciences to both save money and be prepared throughout the semester. We were very fortunate to have the support of our Vice President of Instruction for that event to kind of, offer us the space, the time, and the goodies to attract people to come. And again, just to spread awareness and information across campus so that people can see, yes, this is happening. Yes, your colleagues are doing it. And here are the benefits in your classroom. We also created an OER accessibility rubric for faculty use. And I'm going to go ahead and drop a link to that in the chat. It's on the OERTX site. And so what that was is in the summer of 2023, several of us attended an accessible OER Academy that was hosted by ISKME, and it was for cohorts from institutes of higher education. And it was a completely free workshop, and it was really designed to promote OER as an accessible resource. So giving us all the training that we needed to see how OER that is currently existing could improve digital accessibility across our campus, and how we could build OER from the ground up, making it accessible to all students from beginning to end in terms of the development process. That was a fantastic resource for us. And I have relied on that in so many ways, that training in my own teaching, in my own English classes. So that content we were able to apply to an accessibility rubric that MCC has in-house for checking the accessibility of any course that's offered online or in hybrid or high flex form. So we took that information and we adapted it and created a rubric that would allow faculty members to determine whether or not OER that they were considering for adoption in their classes was appropriate. And if it wasn't appropriate, what were the changes that would need to be made to it? And was it a worthwhile investment of their time and resources to modify that content to make it accessible for their classrooms?
Thanks, Yolanda. And I really do think that rubric is useful. In fact, we talk about it a great deal in the OER Essentials PD class. So I'm going to talk about these last 2 points. One of the things we really wanted to make sure we did to build momentum was make sure we had training available, professional development training for faculty or staff who are interested in OER. We all had the benefit of taking these really great free training courses from the co-board and ISKME, and then they weren't really being offered as much anymore, which is okay. But we knew that there were lots of folks at our institution who hadn't taken those courses and who really needed that same type of training. So one of our goals was to offer similar things in-house here at MCC that people could take for professional development credit. So we decided to develop those. The OER Essentials class, there's a little graphic for it here on the side that gives you kind of a rough sense of how it's laid out. It's 11 hours of PD credit. Our faculty are supposed to get about 24 hours of PD credit a year, so it's probably about half of what they would need each year. It's kind of built in mostly a face-to-face format at this point. When we were thinking about how to design it, a lot of it is actually built on some of those creator academy type skills that we learned when we took the classes from the cohort. So when we initially took those classes, the way that the course is structured so that it actually happens in a group in OERTX, that's what we did with our OER Essentials course. So it's offered as a group in OERTX. We use the discussions feature in OERTX to facilitate discussion. We teach people how to use the open author tool, just like we learned how to do in our training course, how to find and vet resources. And then we look at some of the other options available, like OER Commons, the Open Textbook Library, OpenStax. So the course really gives people like an overview of OER in their world. I think of it as sort of the shallow end of the pool, about to where you're in 4 feet. So maybe up here, but you're not really treading water quite yet. For that class, students are, or participants, I should say, are required to publish an OER resource. So that might be a syllabus, an activity, a video, anything they want really that has some type of merit for other faculty or institution folks in higher education at their institution. They can publish that in OERTX, and it should have a CC BY license or a permalink. So there's some requirements for it. But our goal is really just to give people a little bit of experience using the open author tools, finding resources that are available to them, assessing them for accessibility, and also to network with one another. One of the features I like about the OERTX platform is all of the cohorts can see one another's comments. So they can see people who took the course before, and you know how many people have taken it overall. Who can I go to from my department or other areas of campus to kind of get more information, feel connected, share ideas for projects. So the level 1 course has been great. We're looking forward to the next installment. The next thing that we really did to try and build momentum is to organize an OER challenge competition. For this, we also based it on other kind of mini grant or award models that other institutions have offered. At our institution, this will start on October 15th and run until about December 12th that we'll be taking submissions. There's a flyer kind of screenshot included here and also a link to the challenge call for proposals or call for submissions in the slide. This is open to any MCC faculty, staff, or student creators. So people like supplemental instructors or tutors create materials. And they can submit in terms of the most resources shared, the best quality resource, the most students who are served, or the biggest cost savings to students. And they can submit individually or as a department. The best news about this challenge is we got our vice president of instruction to agree to fund the awards. So we had that buy-in there to really kind of like get support. I think it also doesn't hurt that it happens right before the holiday season. So folks are kind of thinking about, well, I could go ahead and do this. I could submit and then have like a little bit of extra money for gifts and that kind of thing. So we're very excited about it. Once we have submissions received, we're going to use a rubric to vet them. We'll probably have a virtual or an in-person gallery where folks can see the submissions and then talk about what they like the best. And then we'll do the awards. So it's an exciting thing to be part of. I'm very proud of that project. All right, so those are the things we've done so far. We're going to kind of give you a sense of our goals or the next steps that we've got. So we've already done a level 1 course. We'd like to do a level 2. Our hopes are to kind of lay that out in the spring. And I didn't mention this, but a lot of the resources we've used for building these courses are already published, available online in OER Commons and OERTX. Abby Elder from Iowa State University has a really great workbook. Austin Community College, yay, we've drawn on their resources a great deal as well. So if you're thinking about a professional development course at your own institution, you don't have to reinvent the wheel. You can find a lot of those materials out there already. We're also looking to track more data. So I have spoken with our director, vice president of institutional research and effectiveness about surveys and other instruments we could use to kind of track some of that cost savings, how we can kind of set that up to be sustaining so we're not sending out surveys constantly. She was talking about putting it in perhaps a course evaluation as a thing that we could include for students. So I'm very hopeful about easy ways to kind of get that information and have it on hand to use. We're also looking for more mini grants. So I mentioned our vice president of instruction is very supportive of our work. And he has actually asked for Yolanda to work on a mini grant as well for our INRW, which is integrated reading and writing materials. So yeah, I think he's very enthusiastic. We're hopeful that some of our high cost courses or courses that require lots of materials, we can really kind of get going there and have some real change. So it's very exciting. John, I'm going to let you talk about the LinkedIn group. Go ahead.
Well, we wanted to, so OERTX, we'd love people to come and network with us there, but not a lot of people do have an account or know about it. So we wanted to create a LinkedIn group just to network and share ideas, kind of connect with each other. We've just kind of got it started. I'll post the link in the chat to it. But if you have a LinkedIn account, it's a good way to kind of professional social media and network together. That way, if you have questions or want to share ideas, we could do that there, and we'd be happy to connect with you there. So,
yay. I'll talk about, so we also have in spring, some of you may have heard of the D2S2 project, which is digital design for student success, which I think is also affiliated with the co-board. There are some shells available with OER materials integrated in them for your courses. So in spring, I will be piloting one of those. And we're excited to see what kind of offerings might be available for other courses soon, and just how that process is going to go. So I'm pretty psyched about that for spring. And last, I'm going to let anybody else jump in on this as well, who's interested in the open pedagogy and getting students involved as creators. That's definitely been an area that I think has been both a desire and a challenge for us, how to get more students involved, how to have them really contributing to the things that we want to see published in OERTX or OER Commons, and also giving us feedback on how OER really benefits them and makes a difference for their success in our classes. One thing I've started doing in my classes is as part of the OER Essentials class, one of the exercises focus on open design for your assignment. So making them renewable so students are kind of working on them and you can reuse some of that content. So I'm working on some of that for my literature courses and my composition 2 courses. But I think that's pretty exciting too. Anybody else want to jump in on the open pedagogy part?
Well, I'll jump in just a little bit and plug Nick's book. The other professor that was involved in the podcast is Professor Nick Webb, and he actually got a grant from the co-board to create an OER book for, Jessica, correct me if I'm wrong, it's for 1301 and 1302 both.
Yep.
And one thing that was really innovative about Nick's book is that he is actually, with his students' permission, using work that his students produced in his book. So the premise is that showing students that they can write by example. So all of the examples in his book are from his students' work. So his students are actually published in that particular work, and he got them involved in that. And they, from what he said, they were really excited about it. And I think it's a really great thing to show students that, yes, you can actually do it too. See, other students have done it, you can do it as well. So sometimes the best leaders for students are other students. And so having that example for them, I think has been really helpful. I think he's found a lot of success with that book. I think he presented with one of his students at I can't remember what conference it was, but it was a virtual conference about 1.5 years ago on his book. And I think students find it very helpful, and I think they really also enjoy being partners in the process. So I thank you, Yolanda, for posting the link to Nick's textbook. Like I say, I think a lot of students have been very encouraged by that, especially in writing. Yolanda and Jessica can speak to that better than I can, as they are both English professors. But I think just showing students that, yes, you can do this, and look, here's what other students have done as well. And so I think that there's a lot, I think open pedagogy is just kind of getting off the ground. I think there's going to be a lot more, I think it's going to grow in the next few years, and I will be very interested to see where that goes.
Awesome. Okay, so at the end, we mentioned strategies and tips for everybody else considering OER initiatives. And I have some advice here from Abby Elder. So definitely, I think when we got started, Kristen had this really great vision, and she was like, well, what are we need to make a plan. We need to know what can we really do? What are really the things that we need? What's our scope? What kind of timeline do we have? So I think these steps for getting started are really super useful. So considering your needs at your institution, what's going to have the most impact, determining your goals, what is it that you really hope to accomplish near term and long term. So this semester or this academic year, what do we really want to accomplish? Identifying exemplars. For us, that's been super useful for the OER Essentials class. What did ACC do? What did they do at Iowa State? Finding those other things to draw on so we don't feel like we're just fiddling around in the dark. We've got some clear ideas of how to make that work. Assessing your institution specifically. So what barriers and strengths exist? I will say, I think one of the things I love about MCC, we have a beautiful physical campus. it's a wonderful place to work. And there's only one, really, right? So place like ACC or Dallas Community College, where there's 5 or 6 different satellite campuses, just the space and having everyone in the same place can be a barrier. There can be resistance among faculty in different departments who may or may not want to use OER, who might resist having everybody pick the same textbook, and then their textbook for their course is more expensive. So identifying what those barriers and strengths are, I think is important. Funding and support. So who is willing and able to help? We've mentioned several times our Vice President of Instruction. We should mention Dr. Fred Hills. He was our Vice President of Instruction before, and he's since retired. And now we have Dr. Chad Eggleston. They're both paragons of integrity. So we are very grateful to them. In addition, we also have Kathy McLennan at our institution, who supports grant writing and then grant implementation. So we haven't done any big beefy grants yet, but she has emphasized she is willing to help if we decide to do so. So identifying those sources of support, who can really advise you, who can help you with this work, who can get you over the finish line, that's very important. And then just getting to work. I think knowing in your heart that what you're going to do is going to matter for your institution, your colleagues, and your students. That's really what sustains you through a long haul effort like this. All right. So this is our conclusions and questions slide. So we do think all of these efforts take dedication and planning, but I'll speak for the group, but everybody else can jump here in a second when we do questions. I do think all of this really matters, and I think it is worth it. So I encourage everyone, get out there and find the things that you think are most going to benefit you and your institutions. And I think we're ready for questions. Liz and other moderators, I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing, I think now.
That's good.
Okay, good.